City of Gerhard will hold a work session. In this work session, the public's invited to attend but not speak at that work session. We're going to discuss Councilor Gould's proposed changes to ordinance 930. We're going to go over the public safety building ballot timing options that Chad's put together for us, and the costs and related information so we can make a decision at the August meeting. So we'll go over this public safety building first. Chad?
Certainly. Sorry, I was just looking at the map.
Are you going to give us an update?
Yeah, just a little one. They just updated us from a watch to an advisory, which means still possible, and potential, something on the beach, whether it be with recurrence or what have you. So they just updated it a little bit. That's all that I.
So is it watch, warning, advisory, or how does it go?
It goes, warning is the worst, advisory, then watch,
Okay.
and then below that is threat. So we were at watch and we've just come up to advisory.
Since I've been working all day long, what is this referred to?
Oh, there was a,
8.2 and an 8 something earthquake and rain. Yeah, things have been rocking and rolling up there in Russia.
It was actually in the water.
3 hours or I think 3 or 4 hours.
In the east coast of Russia and the.
yeah, right on the east coast.
Aren't they in the volcanic chain?
Yeah, everything's been rocking and rolling up there for the past couple of weeks. So.
Yeah, maybe I just had a bit of a, sorry about that, Mr. Mayor, but just wanted to kind of update you.
Okay.
So we've been talking a little bit about the public safety building and the ballot timing. The mayor and Alina and I have had a couple of conversations with Paige Richardson, who is owns a PR firm that has been assisting us. She was a friend of Peter's and was advising Peter on our situation. And so she reached out after Peter's passing and wanted to make sure that we were still in contact and to help us with some advice. And then if we chose to in the future, we could potentially hire her firm to assist us in some communication. But tonight's work session, as I put in this paragraph here up above, is intended to help the city council evaluate the best timing for placing a bond measure for Gerhardt's proposed public safety building on the ballot. The city is at a key decision point whether or not to move forward with a vote in November 2025 or wait until May 2026. This handout that I put together outlines the current status of the project, cost considerations, funding strategies, and the potential benefits and risks of each timeline. The goal is to ensure that you, the councilors, have the information needed to make an informed and strategic decision. One of the major concerns that Paige Richardson did have was the timing of the election being this November, being as how that is a generally very low attended, searching for the right word here, election where there's really not any major issues going on in the United States or in the state. So generally that election has a very low turnout. And her concerns with low turnout elections is that there won't be as much participation in that, is that what she believes that the city of Gerhardt and its residents would require. Her concern is that then people not participating could change the outcome of the election, usually in the negative because of the low performance, the low attendance. So I took this opportunity to just put together this ballot timing for options and also talk about some of the other ideas that we have to continue to move forward with this project, but to provide more information and maybe do a little bit more homework. Also with the hopes of doing a survey within our community. Once we have designed a survey, taking that information from the survey and then potentially communicating to the community or changing our plans either slightly or altogether, depending on how these surveys come out. So right now, the current status of the project is we're estimated project cost of about 33 million. Ballot language, Peter had assisted and Chad Jacobs has looked at the ballot language and the ballot title, and they're prepared to work on that if the city council decides to go forward with the November ballot. If we went through with November, we would have to apply to the county for that ballot here in the middle of August. I believe it's August 13th. When we were doing our budget, we kept $50,000 remaining in the budget for outreach and planning for this period of time. And if the council is going to give us directions, it really should be, should the city place the bond on the November 2025 ballot or wait until May of 2026? I put the ballot timing options here. Option 1 is the November 2025, keeps the project on schedule, avoids delay related cost increases. But then the cons is the low turnout election, off year, no major state or federal races, less time for public engagement, which I think that most of us believe that there needs to be more of that, outreach and value engineering. And also an increased risk of defeat due to organized opposition or lack of voter education. Option 2 would be the May 2026 election. The pros allow for, and these numbers are just estimates, so we still haven't gotten them brought down completely. But if we went for the May 2026 election, it would definitely be easier for us to do a community survey, which is in the planning stages now. We haven't pulled the trigger on anything, but it's around $20,000. But we are working to make that less expensive as well. And once we have a better direction from the city council, we'll engage with those folks to determine what the best route to take would be for that survey, the cost of that survey, and how to do it. Another pro is public relations support to inform voters, to give voters more information about the project. Another pro to this is that we could do some further work with the architects to explore cost reductions. When we were designing the public safety building, we were designing it in a way that could give us what it is that we need now for safety and a little bit of growth for Gearhart. Also incorporating potentially the city hall project. And I had a conversation with the architects here just recently, which said that they would be more than happy to help us explore some other cost reduction ideas that they have, that we have, and we can look at making this project a little bit less expensive. And also right now, we're in ongoing discussions with the Oregon Building Codes Division about potential exemptions to critical infrastructure rules. Many of us feel like the critical infrastructure rules that are in place for the public safety building is kind of an unfunded mandate, meaning that small communities such as us are required to build these types of buildings, but they're extremely expensive. So our building official, Leonard Brogdon, is in conversations with the Oregon State Building Codes Division to see what options it could be for our situation. We've asked Leonard a couple of times, is there anything we could do to lessen the impact of the cost on the community with these critical infrastructure? And he didn't think so. And then he also reiterated that there is nothing that he can do to make it easier on the city. It's his license, it's at risk if he did. So he wanted to check with the Oregon Building Codes Division, and they made contact, and they're in conversations this week, potentially beginning of next about this. Another pro for a May 2026 election is the higher voter turnout due to a primary elections period of time. And then also, and this is just pie in the sky, no guarantees, no promises, but there could be a possible improvement in municipal bond interest rates. That's something that's been said by our the firm D.A. Davidson, who's been assisting us with this project. The architects are also along that, and kind of is playing out in the news a little bit, that nobody really knows for sure. The cons for the May 2026 election is the estimated 6-month delay. Talked to the architects about the delay, and winter weather and seasonality is really not a factor in this particular project. Inflation impact is a factor though. And if we were to do and use the estimated 6% increase over those 6 months, that could be an additional 1.98 million in costs due to the amount of time that goes by, due to the loss of purchasing power from the city due to expenses and cost of construction and that. But that's also up a little bit up in the air. Things seem to be settling down a little bit with building costs right at the moment. Prices seem to be normalizing and a few have reduced, so we're watching. Cost of the impact of delay, current cost of $33 million, 6% inflation for 6 months. So we bring the new total up to about 35 million based on the $33 million current cost. The strategic budget use of the $50,000, if May 2026 is chosen, would allow us to do a few things. The citywide public opinion survey, which is estimated at 20,000. Public relations firm for messaging and engagement, potentially within 15 to 20,000. And then the remaining funds would be additional time with the architects to explore savings. They're working on some figures as to what that might cost, so we will have those at the end of this week. Could lower interest rates cancel out the inflation? Yeah, it's a possibility. No promises though. So with a 5% rate at a bond of $33 million, estimated repayments for a total of 52.6 million. But if we went to the May 2026 at a $35 million bond with the increase with 6% included, at a rate of 4.25%, bring that bond to about 53 million. So maybe a slight increase overall, but the interest rates would save us some of that increase. Some of it, not all of it, or depending on what the rates do. Now that's considering a 0.75% rate reduction as a possibility for them. A 3/4 drop in interest rate could save $2.5 to $3 million in borrowing costs over the 20 years. Estimated. Could cancel out the $2 million inflation increase. And the delay may have little or no net impact on taxpayers if rate drops. And then we put some ideas here as why the rates may drop, and this was based off of D.A. Davidson and the news. Federal Reserve rate cuts expected in late 2025 or early 2026. I don't know who's expecting them, but that seems to be what the news is reporting. There's also slowing inflation that's happening. And that is also being seen in some construction costs, not all. Wood package, had a conversation with a contractor yesterday. And the revised wood package for the same house that they designed 6 months or almost a year earlier had actually gone down a few percentage points. There's also turning into a higher investor demand for municipal bonds. Now, not a huge amount of higher demand, but there is a small amount of higher demand for municipal bonds. They're starting to be taken more seriously, which would help lower the rates potentially. And continued strong credit ratings with the city of Gerhart. So the bottom line comparison, very simple. November 2025, turnout would be low, risk would be higher, defeat risk, but the opportunity is a faster timeline. May 2026, a higher turnout, the risk is, potentially around $2 million inflation and better engagement and possible savings. So I put a summary down below. Delaying the bond measure for 2026 gives the city more time to engage the public, explore cost saving options, and potentially benefit from lower interest rates at the cost of an estimated $2 million increase due to inflation. However, that increase could be offset by reduced borrowing costs. Choice ultimately comes down to whether we prioritize staying on schedule or taking the time to strengthen community support and refine the project for long-term success. So I wonder if Carrie or Melina had anything to add. They were present in the conversations that we had with a few of the experts. Or if Dana Preston have any questions or anything to add about the construction side of things. Or if any of you have any questions that I might be able to help answer to give you more information to help make this decision.
The only thing that comes to mind is I forget the initials for the company that we were considering for a survey. But they also felt pretty strongly that the turnaround time would be very, very short to try and get any kind of a survey for this November. Like literally, they wouldn't probably even want to do it. And they felt the engagement with the public at the primary was definitely a better way to go. Without even thinking about the survey, that's just from their experience with elections and such.
May I add a little bit to that also? If I remember right, and correct me if I'm wrong, you too. They also said that the purpose of the survey is to get feedback from your residents and then to potentially make some changes, adjustments, and that sort of thing in regards to what we learn from that. And potentially the two other.
Excuse me, hello, can I talk to somebody?
Hi.
Hi, I'm so glad you have this door open.
Excuse me for a minute. Yeah, man, we're just in the middle of a meeting. What can we do for you?
I'm taking care of Jim Terra Park.
Okay.
And I just heard that there's a snowy one that's supposed to happen. I'm here at 11:00 and my phone's not working.
Yeah, no, it's been in the finance group, so they're not on. Wait for the start. Or 12, but it's a business moment, it's a small one, each is coming to share.
She's okay here, really?
Yeah, so.
This is the way I was.
So I would turn that on and.
She's taking
Transit and she's that.
Yeah.
And her phone's not good.
We're gonna go on.
So, the camera.
Yeah, TV says, I know Channel 8 was going over what the warning advisory and everything, what's going on. I have someone who works.
Yeah. Yeah, no worries. If there is something else that you need. Okay. You're welcome.
So that's on.
What was that?
Talking about RHM,
Yes, they thought that it would be handy if that we were going to do some of this advanced work, talk about some PR, talk to the architects and get some options, and then go into the survey. You would have something, some good solid survey questions to actually ask your residents versus basically at this point would be asking them yes or no, because this is our plan. If we wait until May, we have the opportunity to change the plan a little bit and to look at any other opportunities we can. Honestly, we looked at a lot of different ways that this public safety building could be built. And with the help of Councilor Dana and Councilor Preston, we tried to value engineer the heck out of it. Is there something that we can do that would be less money and less impact on the community? Yes, potentially there is, but it might involve things like remodeling the current building, which is a lot like throwing money into the wind. But that is an option that we could explore, that we haven't really done seriously. Another option is that could we find a way to make just a smaller fire station with the very basic necessities, and potentially removing even a bay. Yes, those are all potentially things that we can do, but I think that through the design process, we found that that would really be cutting your heart short. And in a few short years, again, we would be looking at what we need to do to either add on or to redo, with potentially wasting a lot of money. So those are questions that the architects, again, can help us out with. We have had those conversations. We did do our due diligence in regards to the best way to try to forward this to the community. we didn't anticipate that the cost would be so high. But I think we did a really good job on the building itself and the type of structure needed for Gerhard. So we have some options, and the timing is difficult, especially if we're going to look at the November election. So I wanted to give you these options. And take any other questions that you might have.
Chad, is the inflation impact estimate of 6%, does that include any change vis-a-vis the tariffs?
The 6% was included, there was some variability added to that 6% for tariffs. But so far it hasn't really materialized, so I really can't answer that any better than that. We don't see, I mean, there's trade deals being made all the time with Europe, things like that, things are changing constantly. So it's hard to put an idea on, but I wouldn't say at this point that tariffs are going to be a huge factor in this. But that's just my estimations based on what I'm hearing in the news.
So that's a no.
Yeah.
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 The other thing is I'm just really kind of confused about this because Kerry said to all of us that he would want X percentage positivity on a survey before taking it to any ballot measure. So how could we possibly, since we've not done that survey yet, how could we possibly make a decision in mid-August to take this to the November ballot? I'm confused about that.
Well, that would give you an idea of the way I feel about this. I think May is a better time. Not only from the standpoint of voter turnout, but voter engagement by the city. Otherwise, starting in the middle of November, August, the middle of August, that'd be it. It'd just be us five going out and beating doors down and telling people about this. If we waited until May, then we have 5 months, 7 months where we can engage people. And we can also explore if there's a way to cut the costs. Because right now we're stuck at 33 million. And if there's a way to drop, I mean, we won't even get through the building codes division talk in time for the city council.
Right, I absolutely understand all of that. I mean, it looks to me like we can't take it to the November ballot if we're gonna do all that. We're gonna have a survey and see where people are at. We can't possibly take it to the November ballot, right?
Well, we don't want to take it to the November ballot unless we have some estimation of voter engagement and positivity in the vote.
Right,
You need
we're not-
51%
And I'm
of
saying,
people who vote to say yes.
right, and I totally agree with you guys. And I'm saying, we can't get that information by mid-August to take it to the November ballot, can we? How would
It
that
would
work?
be a push, it would be a push, and again, we would have some very simple questions without any options.
And with those questions in the survey, the way that it's worded and the way it's presented will give us additional information about the voter and how they're feeling. And this is what this survey company does, is they strictly do municipalities. And they help with that process.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that we could make a decision in mid-August regarding taking it to the November ballot based on some attenuated survey that we pushed out the door like 2 days from now. That fair?
I think, yeah,
Okay, so
Is that something that this company would help with or we would do ourselves?
the company would help us with it. Because they looked at our surveys that we had done and they said that, you know, you did a good job and you got a decent amount of people that were in there. But they feel like that this question needs a little bit more of a personal touch and they would like to almost go door to door as well and ask people about this situation and ask them the questions. They were upfront with us when we first started talking this more than a couple of weeks ago. And saying that they could potentially get something done by November, but again, we've been burning that timeline up here within the last couple of weeks. They're still able to help us out, but they said it really wouldn't tell you as much as it would as if we sat down and really thought about it and then gave some options while we were doing some of this background work to see if there were other options.
Help me understand, what if it were to be on the ballot in November and it were to fail? What's the difference between that and a survey? Because it's certainly not gonna cost us $20,000 to put it on the ballot and have the folks come back and tell us yes or no. Why does everybody think that a failed ballot, it would be that catastrophic?
The way Peter put it to me was just, you don't wanna go and have another bond fail. You end up going down a rabbit hole of failures upon failures upon failures. That's pretty much how he explained it to me.
Well, ballots fail frequently, and there's a lot of other things that go into the timing of when you put things on the ballot, whether they're successful or not. And I get what Paige is saying about November being a time when less voters might be interested in voting on it. But I don't know how familiar Paige is with the voters in Gearhart. We typically have,
Oh, I think she's gotten a little bit of a taste.
because we have very engaged voters, and this issue is going to be something that, I mean, everybody is going to turn out. We're gonna have a very high turnout no matter when we put it on a bond. Another thing that can determine whether or not a bond, or that can affect the success of a bond measure, is other competing bond measures. If, for example, Warrenton is talking about putting a bond measure on, you wouldn't want to go at the same time they were, or if the county were to come up with a bond measure that they wanted to put out. You just don't necessarily want to see a bunch of bond measures going out
Warren
at the same time.
Mom wouldn't come to us.
I get that, but historically, and this isn't just me talking, this is some of the training that I've received while going to the LOC things. In fact, in this last conference, they had quite a bit of input from folks that have tried to get bond measures, and that's one of the top things that they reiterated over and over and over again. It's just not a good idea to go out for a bond when surrounding cities are also going out for bonds. It just, for whatever reason, that affects your success rate. Because people look at, typically look at that as a lot of money. Whether you believe it or not, I get it. I just do not understand why we would want to pay $20,000 for a survey. That just, to me, seems like a lot of money. A lot of money. And I am talking to a lot of people who very much want to see this go and would be willing to knock on doors. I don't, you make it sound, or I don't want to give anybody the impression that we had some ideas, that there were some cost savings that we just didn't explore.
No.
That it really bothers me that that anybody would imply that we in any way said, yeah, that, we could do that, that might work, but, we'd really rather have a better fire station. For a station, and that's, people need to understand what you're talking about. If you're talking about remodeling the fire station, I don't know from an engineering standpoint that that can even be done. I mean, we were all in the room when the engineer was talking about that place, and I saw every single person in that room look for the exit doors. Nobody was comfortable sitting inside that building as the engineer was talking about it. I cannot see how they can remodel it without taking it down and rebuilding it again. And if you're going to do that, why would you make it for 1950s size fire station or fire trucks? That we know are not, you know, are not gonna be, not only not going to serve our community well for the length of time that it would take us to pay off upon, but it puts us at risk of, I mean, so much liability. And we're talking about money, and I get it, we have to talk about money. And when you say people didn't know that it was gonna cost this much, maybe people didn't understand it was gonna cost this much. But from our very first town hall that we had in February of last year, I told people, typically when you want to save money on a project, you reduce the scope. You make it smaller, you make it, you find ways to save money by putting it here, by the citizens saying, this is where we want it. I told them at that time, you were actually increasing the scope of this project because the engineering is going to, number one, run up our costs. Then it's also going to affect the footprint here. The footprint just simply isn't large enough to meet our needs. It's gonna then affect public works and everybody else. And then you still have the problem of where's the fire station going to, where are they gonna operate out of? And folks were really thinking that they were gonna be able to pitch tents and put fire trucks in tents. They just didn't have a realistic expectation. I was not surprised when this number came in. And I did everything I could in those meetings to say, no, we don't need that. No, you don't need that. That's a, you'd like to have, but I cannot go out and stand and say, we need to have that. So take that off the list. But I want to make it clear. I think any talk of remodeling this existing building is nonsense, irresponsible, sends the wrong message, and that basically just sounds like a political statement to me. And I apparently am not a great politician because if that's what people want to hear, I can't tell them that. I cannot tell them that we should remodel that station.
Yeah, and to clarify, nobody, I mean, everybody that I've talked to in the profession does not think that that building is worth remodeling. It was an option that's been thrown out a bunch of times and maybe should be explored, or at least better communicated as to what those costs would be. According to the people I was talking to, it would be spending between $3 and $5 million trying to shore up the building a little bit to give a few more seconds of escape for somebody under an earthquake type situation. Adding ventilation for the trucks would not only make it even more difficult to operate in there, and it would be expensive. Taking walls and making an area for the turnout gear so it's not exposed to the diesel exhaust. Adding some sort of cleanup area for decontamination. And then potentially some office space to make more room in the city hall. It doesn't make any sense. And again, I think that the group did a very good job of trying to make that building as small, compact, and as efficient as necessary. People were shocked about the cost, $33 million. And I also agree with you that I think was short-sighted by people understanding that we need a new public works building as well. We need a new public works storage building as well. We would need temporary digs in order to continue to operate while construction was going on. And the architects did say that it made no sense to do so. But it's still something that I think that we can communicate out a little bit better. I think, yeah, that would be throwing money out into a building that would be only good for maybe another 5 years. And then you would be out that money and still in the same position with 5 years of a 6% increase. So I do agree with you there, for sure.
Well, for me, I know we have to talk about money. I know that this is a lot of money. I know that this is an eye-watering number. But again, we told everybody that it would be an eye-watering number, and they said that's where they wanted it. So we're having to talk about money, but to me, what we really should be talking about is what is good for this community. How much longer are we gonna put this off? How long are we going to take a chance and roll the dice and hope that nobody gets hurt in that building, that OSHA doesn't come in to inspect us? That our volunteers are going to want to continue to work in that building. And so that we're gonna be able to continue to recruit volunteers. And how well are they going to be able to service our community? I mean, they're driving around in 1950 size fire trucks, and if something happens with one of those fire trucks, they have to be custom ordered. It costs us 2 to 3 times the amount, and it takes 2 to 3 times the length of time, and we're talking years to get a custom fire truck that will fit in there.
It costs 3 times as much.
It could cost 2 to 3 times. They could go in and they could, if we had standard size fire station that could fit standard size apparatus, they could go and get essentially a floor model.
Yeah, I understand that.
And they can get that for
Is a
anywhere
custom
from.
one?
Mhm.
Yeah.
2 or 3 times, so let's say a fire truck costs $1 million. A custom fire truck costs 2 million or 3 million.
A
Just to be
floor model,
clear.
a floor model could cost you somewhere in the $500,000 to $600,000 range. And then you always have to, have it fixed up with your equipment. But it's gonna be much less time and much less money to do that. Once you have to do a custom design, they have to create the plans from the get-go. And yeah, you're talking at over $1 million for that easily. And then the length of time on a wait on those is much, much longer. And also the problem that we're gonna have is that you could potentially, if our city wanted to be serviced by used fire trucks, there's the potential that you could find a still usable fire truck that was used for a short time, but just like used cars and everything else, as everybody around us starts to improve their facilities and get standard size, the availability of custom size, smaller fire trucks like ours, they're gonna be harder and harder to find, which means the price is gonna continue to go up. And that's not even talking about, again, getting back to public safety. We have a very proud community, but we have a proud community of people that are retirement age, a lot of retirees here, a lot of people need somebody to come pick them up off the floor at 2 o'clock in the morning. We need, just like the guy that went down about a month ago and was essentially he wasn't alive, and they revived him and got him he's alive in the hospital because of these guys. We need to be thinking about what is best for our community, in addition to the money. And there are a lot of people that are very worried about, the people that are talking to me are very worried about delays.
Okay,
So,
go ahead. Go ahead.
amazingly enough, I agree with you 100%. There's an expression that goes something along the lines of making a silk purse out of a sow's ear. So my question is to all of us, do we need to think of a plan B? And I don't know the answer to that. And could the plan B not be shoring up that horrible building over there? Could there be a different plan B? It's just my question. Do we need to talk about a plan B? I wasn't even gonna bring it up today because it's like, we have covered this for how many years now? And it's like, anyway, So do we need to talk about Plan B that does not involve shoring up that horrible building over there? That's a question. Second question I have is, could we, and I have volunteered to do this, go knock on doors and get the information, at least some of the information we need before the middle of August? Is that even a feasible thing to do? Those are my questions.
Good questions. I don't have an answer for it.
Well, I mean, to me, we're not on plan A. Or B, or C, or D. I mean, I think that we're somewhere down. I mean,
We have one plan,
well, right now, but it's.
or two plans, $1 million apart. Depending on which building option you look at.
Right, but we've already, you know, folks already were pitched the idea of let's build it just on the border. And they, for $14 million, or $14.5 million, and they didn't like that. It was less money and it was close. Now people seem to think that for some reason, people would agree to making our main fire station up in Reed and Hurtig, which is 3 miles away in the city. You know, if you look at it, the address is actually the city of Warrenton or its county area.
So
I don't see people going for that. I mean, what would our plan B be? I don't think our plan B is work on that building. It's not a good investment for us. Do we brush off and relook at the plans on the edge of town? The ones up there at the Highland.
The whole thing about the location of the fire station is that the central location here serves the greatest number of people. It's more expensive, and anybody that talks about remodeling this building, I've been in the building business my entire life. That's a non-entity. You will have you'll have everybody in public works quitting. Okay, you're gonna have all kinds of problems with the government entities. They're just giving us slack to see whether or not we're gonna come up with some sort of a positive solution. So the public spoke. This has always been the heart of Gearhart. The location, because of the subterranean, what's underneath there. The pilings, my idea originally was, you know, drive pilings down, steel pilings, put a pile cap on top, demolish the building. You take the rubble that's there and then you add some to it and you raise it up a little bit. Okay, and build a steel structure. Every single ferry dock in Canada is built on worse soils than we've got here.
But what does that have to do with our building code, what you just said?
What happens, what the deal is that with the tsunami awareness and everything like that, the state of Oregon has said you cannot build a critical infrastructure.
I understand.
Okay, just a
all
minute.
that.
A critical infrastructure in a tsunami zone. And then all of a sudden, the legislature looked and they said, well, everything on the coast is in the tsunami zone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay.
they took away that,
So they
They
took
took
it
away
away,
that.
but they gave us more stringent regulations as far as building goes. And with the more stringent regulations comes the increase in cost. Now, who knows? I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. A year from now, we may have a recession. And building costs go down. And interest rates go down. Who knows? I have no idea. The $33 million was a shock to me,
a shock.
a shock.
Yeah.
So the question is, all the people who wanted it to be in this location, do they still, knowing what it's gonna cost, do they still want it to be in this location, or would they entertain a different location?
And which location would that be? And if there is an event, okay, I believe the glass is half full. So until the big shake comes, this location here services the most people, which is what it's what our public service people are designed for. Okay? I mean, if there's an earthquake, you're not getting to this highway.
Okay, I understand that's what you think, Preston, and I appreciate that. My question is that what everybody else who wanted it in this location, are they still thinking they want it in this location? Knowing what it's gonna take to put it in this location,
Well, that's why we wanted to do a survey.
right? I agree.
Well,
I'd
that
like
would
to
be the
know.
only reason to do it, a survey, but I don't think we need to pay $20,000 to do that.
So that's my other question, can we go knock on doors instead of paying $20,000? I'm willing to go knock on doors and talk to people and find out what they're thinking. Can we do that instead?
I would like, I could see some value in us having a town hall within the next,
People
2
don't
weeks.
show up though.
Probably 40% of this town are independent, they're registered
They don't
independents.
show up.
They don't come to town halls. We have 1,000 people who are voters. We have to ask them.
I think we need to go knock on doors, that's just my sense of it.
well, I'm
The
willing to knock
The
on
people
doors.
who go to town halls are either progressives who just want the fire station done yesterday or a couple of years ago, or they're naysayers who don't want to spend a dime on anything.
Well, I get that, but I think that if we spend $20,000 on a survey, that is going to work against us. And especially if we do have to come up with another solution. And I guarantee you, we're gonna have to come up with another solution if, heaven forbid, somebody gets injured in that fire station, we're gonna have to come up with another solution really, really quick. And that $20,000 could go a long ways towards we're creating some kind of a plan towards that solution. I don't like the idea of the $20,000 survey.
Noted.
Okay, I think we need to know for sure. So the question is, how do we get to that information? We need to know. I agree with you, Carrie. We need to know what people are thinking. We're just 5 people. We are not the community. And yes, we talk to people, but I don't talk to that many people. Maybe you do, Dana, but
I am not pretending to know everything. Or to know everybody in town and the way everybody is thinking. This is as much an unknown to me as, as it is to everybody else. But if we put it on the ballot at some point, that is going to be the survey. They're going to tell us yes or no, and if it's no, then we figure something out. And if that's gonna be the case, I'd rather do it sooner rather than later. If we do a survey and they say in a survey, no. What do we do with the plans that we just had the community work on? People are saying those are our plans. Those are not our plans. That was, we owe it to them, the people that did show up and did the hard work. And whether it was a large percentage or not, there were a lot of very committed people that thought that they were doing good for this community. And this is their work product. It's not my work product. It's not your work product. It's their work product. They came up with this. And the only thing that they left for us to decide is, include or don't include. But none of them said, don't go forward. I mean, I think of the people that were in the last one, they even only like 3 people said no in that last questionnaire.
I think so. I mean, it was the low amount of people, for sure.
I think that the community engagement, I mean, the people that actually engaged in the design process got a real education as to what is needed and how difficult it is. So it's like Dana said, I mean, this wasn't the committee's idea as far as this design goes. This was the community's idea. So how we get the community to get behind what it is that they decided for the amount of money. That's the elephant in the room.
Well, then let's have a town hall then, if that's what you think we need. I personally am going to vote for a May election. It makes sense to me to. We're not a cohesive body yet. And without that cohesiveness, we're not gonna go anywhere. I've talked to at least 12 mayors that have said, you got to be a cohesive council when you go forward on a bond. And I think there are questions still about the cost of this. Now, I don't think Public Works has to be a critical infrastructure building. I could be wrong. Maybe they've passed that rule. You know, and City Hall doesn't have to be. It'd be nice for the people in it. But in saying that, that's $8 million almost. It's 4 million for Public Works. And it's 4 million for City Hall. Okay, that's a small little drop in the bucket of the overall cost. But I feel if we can talk about how we can cut the costs even more, it will mean more people will vote for it. Because right now, I've got an overwhelming majority of people that I've talked to and come to me and talk to me. I've had one couple say, we've run the numbers and we think we can afford it. So we're going to vote for it. The rest of them, they're going, this is just too expensive. And again, if it's knocking on doors, if that's what we decide, then that's what we'll do. But we gotta find out if they're gonna go for it, because otherwise it's a waste of time. And I tell you, it'll be at least 2 years, if not 3, before you can go out for another bond, because you'll have all these people going, it's just more of the same. And they won't see it as saving an OSHA fine or anything else in that matter. But this is a work session. We can't make any decisions. It's something we all need to think about. And when we have our agenda set for August 6th, it'll be on the agenda, a discussion there where we can make a decision if we're going to go forward on the 13th, is it?
Yes.
But, you know, that's a week away, and for us to even get we can't get a survey in a week, and we can't get a town hall set up. Well, we might be able to get one set up. I don't think we can do it before though. We might be able to do it on right afterward.
Well, last January, when you decided that you wanted to reopen this and have a town hall, and we all went along and went in the town halls, and it was the town halls that convinced me that it was the time. to move forward, because the folks in the town hall overwhelmingly said, yeah, we understand we need a new fire station. They
Yeah.
didn't have any idea about the money, or how much it was gonna cost, they just thought that it would be less building there. Because we already own the land, and they thought that that would mean that we could do a small station, and there are people that believe that we, you know, because there's only 1,600 full-time or 1,800 full-time folks in the town, that means that you don't have to have basic things in a fire station that everybody's required to have. And I think that the folks that showed up to the town halls and invested in it, they did a lot of hard work, and I don't know, I just have a hard time telling them, yeah, we're overriding you and all of that work, and saying, no, it's not all that important. I get what you're saying, I do get what you're saying, but what do you, help me understand when you say we wouldn't do public works, are you talking about, how
It wouldn't be a critical infrastructure,
correct,
okay, so it would just be a building.
it would be a building, okay,
All right, so you can knock $3 million off that price tag, $4 million. Because it's made critical infrastructure, because it's tied to the fire hall. Same with the city hall. It's made critical infrastructure by being tied to the,
okay.
So you're suggesting like Public Works over here, Public Works in a different building somewhere else.
yeah,
But not attached to the fire.
right. That way it's not required to be critical infrastructure.
There was a lot of debate going back and forth, and we were having conversations with our architects, they were saying, yeah, you could do that, it potentially could save you a little bit of money. They didn't think that it was that great of a savings, because the amount of underground work that we have to do in this area is basically going to take up most of this land. The amount of underground work they're gonna have to do, they're gonna have to destroy pretty well everything to be able to rebuild it back with the new critical infrastructure standards. Then they thought, okay, well, if we separated the buildings out and made 3 different envelopes rather than combining them together, there's going to be an increase in costs due to 3 separate buildings versus putting one together with critical infrastructure. At the time, they did say that their feelings were that the critical infrastructure side of it, yes, while being as expensive, is just about the same cost, separating all the other buildings. And we explored that a little bit.
Now, one thing, right, so keep that in mind, and we did ask them during that, because that was initially my thought, and that was one of the reasons why I fought so hard to, let's not say that the park can not be in any way part of this solution, because perhaps we could we could have built something smaller, like you're suggesting, for them, and then perhaps just put a small storage facility the size of the normal park bathroom up there, where they could hold perhaps our water pipes and other things that they would need to get us up and running again after a tsunami, things that would need to be held in their ground. That was what I thought, and I asked them that question, and they said, no, it really, once you're designing 2 different buildings, and now you have the mechanicals for different buildings and all of that kind of stuff, by the time you get done, you're not really saving that much money. But one thing that we have not talked about was perhaps we just asked the voters if they'd be willing to throw some money in, and because we don't have any money in our current budget, but we could rent some space that's already existing someplace for them, perhaps across the 101. And then we just need to create some kind of a pole barn storage facility for them somewhere here. And we just built the fire station, and I agree with you. When people started talking about throwing in City Hall, yeah, if we had that kind of money, that makes absolute sense, but it doesn't make sense if we can't get the bond passed, and that's the hurdle that we can't overcome. Then I agree, we drop off City Hall and we start seeing what we can eliminate. I don't see us being able to build public works someplace else, but I could see us perhaps renting an existing space someplace else, but it would take some money because we don't have it in our budget.
Okay,
Everybody that I talked to, including the PR firm, the architect firm, and others have said, wow, this is about the most difficult situation that they've ever seen in regards to a city trying to navigate through this. The term that I keep using is we are stuck between a rock and a rock. They all agree that we kind of are. So this is not easy. This is not something that another community's been able to wrestle through. There has not been any serious critical infrastructure buildings being built for fire stations on the Oregon coast. So we're also kind of a guinea pig on this as well. There's been some work in Nehalem, and there's this stuff going on with Manzanita and their city hall, but nothing along these lines. So this is a challenge, for sure.
And also what people need to understand is I specifically asked the engineer, and no matter where we built, if we built at the park, if we built wherever we build our critical infrastructure in Gearhart, we're gonna have the same problem. They basically said all of Gearhart is going to look like this as far as critical infrastructure. So, so the people that really thought that the park, because it was higher ground, would save us some money, that wouldn't save us money either. You could build non-critical, like I said, perhaps a small storage area up there just to hold some lawnmowers, some landscaping equipment and some pipes. But critical infrastructure, putting the fire station up there that wouldn't be a cost.
okay, well, we've gone an hour on this and I wanna make sure we get a hold of Dana's 9:30 and discuss it, so I'm gonna end that and move on to the amended letter.
About the public safety building, I'll reach out to you individually, get any questions that you might have, collect those. And then we'll have some of those ready for the next city council.
And if we need to, I don't think we can have another work session before then. Okay. So.
A few comments I'd make, that's based on your letter.
Yeah.
So, in the first paragraph, you talk about, that, we were attempting to reduce neighborhood noise complaints generated by professional construction landscaping activities. The primary cause that I recall of why this came to the council was, it was ongoing vibration from the subdivision that was one of the two new subdivisions down here on Cottage. And the properties or the land wasn't prepared well enough. And so the new houses were getting a lot of cracks in their foundations because of settling issues. And so I guess the builders started using some pieces of equipment that were pounding the ground. Like 10
rolling
hours a
compactors.
day, 7 days a week. And after, a month of this or whatever it was, they were about ready to, have a stroke or something. Anyway, that was what started it. I don't even think it had anything to do with landscapers or noise, although I would admit to being quite annoyed by blowers. Gas powered particularly, especially knowing that they're, the absolute, one of the worst polluters there are. Also, my other comment was, like you had a question here about why Sundays. What came to the council was actually asking for the entire weekend. And so that was something that I suggested, to split the difference between not doing anything and what the people were requesting was the whole weekend. And that's how it arrived at Sundays.
Yeah.
Everybody had a day of rest kind of
Right.
thing.
Well, but I think my question was not so much why Sunday, but why or why not Saturday and Sunday, or why was Sunday picked? Because I understand why Sunday would be picked. I mean, if you're going to pick a day, that makes the most sense. But why would you prohibit it every Sunday of the year? But on Christmas, the guy could, you know, be out there with a leaf blower on Christmas or on Labor Day. And I know because on Labor Day, I had a tree removed last year and a lot of people drove by and gave him a hard time. And so I knew for a fact, I'd already checked, that was the only day he could come out and it was not prohibited on Labor Day on Monday. So that was just my question is, was that an oversight not including the holidays? Does it make sense to include the holidays? Because I don't think anybody would have a beef on us saying you can't do it on, you know, on federal holidays on that specific day. But
oversight.
Okay.
I mean, because my recollection was it was strictly, they asked for the whole weekend and I said, how about we split the difference?
A lot of the people that talk to me, and you're right, that was during a real building boom around here that I think has slowed down quite a bit. And it was annoying and I had to put my dog on drugs during the time because she did not like all of the pounding in my own neighborhood. We had a lot of construction. And so I get it. I didn't like the idea of it then because it felt like it almost felt like too much of a fix, because in the wintertime, we don't have this much problem, but in the wintertime, the contractors have a hell of a time finding a day that they can come out. A lot of times, the weather prohibits them from being able to come out and it extends the length of projects, noisy projects or projects that could be annoying that you want done quickly could actually take longer in the winter because if they can't work on the one sunny day of the week. So that's why I threw in there perhaps, I would like us to see us walk it back as far as we can. I know that we're not likely to rescind it completely, but I think in the wintertime, we should look at easing it up a little bit and allowing contractors to do the work on the days that they need to do the work. And maybe limit their hours on Sunday where you can't, come out between you can't start before 9 in the morning. Because I've worked in a lot of cities where that was the case. On a Sunday, you couldn't work before 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I have a note here. Winter isn't a big deal as we are more inside. That's what I wrote here. So I guess we kind of agree there.
But the folks that I've heard from, a lot of contractors are saying, because of the difficulties in finding workers, a lot of their workers have to work on weekends because they're working that's a second job for them. They're working Monday through Friday with one employer, and then they're doing side jobs on Saturday and Sunday. And by taking Sunday out, it's hurting people's ability to get folks out there quickly. Would you agree with that?
I can understand the homeowner can crank up his power tools and work on his own place on Sundays or any day of the week that he wants. The homeowner can mow his grass at 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday and fire up his leaf blower. Okay, the neighbors may not like it, but it's his right to do so. So as far as this whole thing goes, I mean, up in Richie's development there where this whole thing started, I mean, we never ever had a problem with people working on Sundays in Deer Park in my entire life. I think this is a huge overreach.
You think it's a huge overreach for restricting the work on Sundays?
Absolutely.
Well, I hate leaf blowers.
Well, you may hate them, but, I mean, if I lived in your neighborhood and I wanted to mow my grass and blow the leaves and everything out of there isn't anything you can say about it.
Yeah, but neighbors tend to be thoughtful. Most neighbors tend to be thoughtful and probably wouldn't be doing that until.
Depends on
10 or 11.
depends on whose side you're looking at it.
You know what I would probably say to my neighbor if they had to do that, I'd say, do you really have to get every single? Could you just leave a couple of them? Because I swear they blow my neighbors for 2 hours, like literally 2 hours. There must not be one hair out of place, you know what I mean? It's just like so much to me.
Well, the thing is though, that this change that was made doesn't affect that, it doesn't change that, it doesn't really solve the problem that, the thing that you're complaining about. But what it did do is, the folks that work for the city that are just out there trying to weed on Sunday, get accosted. People say, well, if I can't work in my yard, then you can't, and it's just a woman who's just very quietly pulling weeds, and she was approached and told she had to knock it off. That was Sunday.
Right, no.
That's, you know, so if this is gonna stand, we need to clean it up, and if you want to ban leaf blowers, that's a whole different conversation, but this ordinance does not achieve that. It doesn't, and he's right, the only thing it does is it makes it, if you're a second homeowner, you can't hire somebody to come take care of your house or, you know, water your land or, you know, go hang a towel bar on a Sunday. If you're a plumber, you know, or you need a plumbing job done, you could wait longer because they can't send somebody out to work on a Sunday. It's just, to me, it needs some cleanup.
Well, I mean,
And
here's the whole thing, okay? I've got friends of mine that are plumbers, okay? They come to the house, you know, and they're setting finish. There's no noise involved. A painter, okay?
You don't have to convince
Okay.
me. It's absolutely fine, as long as it doesn't make a bunch of noise. I don't care. If you wanna call a plumber on Sundays,
How about a painter?
be my guest.
Just doing outside work in the summertime on Sunday.
Yeah, is the painter just brushing on or rolling on the painter, or are they using a power sprayer?
Right.
That makes noise.
So if you read the suggestions that I had, what I suggested is that instead of attacking contract work, we attack the real problem being how it affects the neighbors around them, and that is via noise, how it impacts their ability to enjoy their own property. So the way that I sought to do that would be to say, this is the problem, and that would be noisy power tools or, you know, things that cause noise that could affect the neighbors. And you can work as long as you're not using those things that we've identified as things that would just disturb the neighbors. And therefore, you can go inside and hang a towel bar, or you can go in and paint with a roller, as long as you're not running your system out of your truck off of a, you know, super noisy. You know, you can't break out impact hammers and start going at concrete to put, you know, run new pipes in a garage or something like that. But as long as you're doing something using hand tools or that can't be heard beyond your property line and disturb your neighbor, then it should be allowed, is my belief.
So let me give you a couple examples. I walk my dog almost every single day of the year. There's been like maybe 3 days in the winter where I didn't go out and walk my dog. So I know what's happening around the city. I'm aware of what noise there is around the city. I'm aware of what's going on. I'm aware of what's being done, just because I'm out. So the other day I was walking past a house that's being redone inside on Pfeiffer. And they were hammering inside the house, regular hammer, not a electric, not a hammer, but gun, whatever. And I could hear the hammering from 3 houses down in all directions, basically. It was so loud, okay? Now, they had a window open, granted. And in the wintertime, you wouldn't have a window open, but I could probably, I'm guessing, still hear that hammering if I was next door neighbors, even if the window wasn't open. That's one example. Another example, I'm out walking on a Sunday in my neighborhood and somebody is having some tile work done inside their house. Okay, I don't know what, but the tiler was there. And the tile guy, and this was, I think, in the winter. The tile guy he's got his tile cutter set up in the garage. And he has the garage door open. So technically, by Dana's standard, he is doing inside work, right?
No, that's, no.
Well, let me finish. He is doing interior work. But the tile saw is making a ton of noise, like I can hear it from 2 blocks away. Okay, so the reason I'm bringing up these examples, and there's only 2 of multiple examples. My question is, how are you going to determine, how is the police force, which is who this is gonna fall on to enforce, how are they gonna determine what constitutes too much noise, what constitutes interior versus exterior? How is all this gonna be weeded out? We just barely have gotten the contractors to the point where they're not doing things on Sunday. And we haven't exactly gotten them exactly to the point because there's always people doing things, contractors doing things on Sunday around here, almost always. So if you muddy this up and you put all these, okay, well, it's okay if you do this, but it's not okay if you do this and blah, 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 and you make all these different things, okay versus not okay, how is that gonna be enforced? Practically speaking.
So turn to the second page, the back side of the first page. Down below where it says, here are my suggestions. I don't tie it to if you're indoors or outdoors. What I suggest is that we add a definition of noise polluting equipment. Means tools and machinery utilized by a contractor, commercial developer, general contractor, or their employees that rely on a power source, like an engine or motor, to perform tasks that would otherwise require manual labor, or which can be heard beyond an owner's property line. So something that can be heard beyond an owner's property line is noise polluting equipment. So that would be your hammer, and that would be your tile saw. And then specific examples of noise polluting equipment may include, but not be limited to, and that is how they make the determination when they go out there: power washers, leaf blowers, power driven saws, lawnmowers, and impact tools such as hammering. Okay, so you don't ever, you can't imagine when you're writing an ordinance like this that you're gonna think of every single instance. So you say, these are some examples, but it's not limited to these, and then it's a judgment call. And they're going to enforce this the same way that they're enforcing it now. I mean, we don't have code enforcement, and they're not going, so it's basically vigilante around here. That's another key issue I have with this. I didn't write it in here, but that's another problem that I have with this, is that this has turned neighbors against neighbors. Neighbors, just like my poor guy that was out there trying to cut a tree, and people coming by, or the woman that was out here working on weeds. That is the enforcement. Is that the kind of community we want to be, where neighbors are going around yelling at neighbors?
This is our community, and I was told this by a city councilor at the time. Our community is complaint-based driven. Enforcement around here is complaint-based driven. So, the complaining might be neighbors, they might be somebody walking by like me, they might be a lot of different scenarios as to who's being bothered and who's making the complaint. So as far as that changing the nature of the way things work in your house, it's all complaint-based driven, pretty much.
Well, I know, but since this law was created, now neighbors they're approaching each other and yelling at each other for it. And the contractors that are doing it. And whether it's, this guy's working on a Sunday, you need to come out, or this guy's working on Sunday and making noise, it's still gonna require somebody to go out there and make a determination that that is the case. So, I think that it's pretty clear that you can stand on the other side of the property line and hear it, then that's a, no, you've gotta, you know, put the hammer away. If you wanna go in there and use a screwdriver, that's fine, but if you are using a leaf blower and you're being paid to do it, that's not.
Okay, well, I gotta say, Peter wrote this, okay? And Peter, one thing he was always on about is when he makes an ordinance, he doesn't want it challenged, he wants it airtight. And this was put in place in 21, I believe is the date you gave us. And on, I just wanna make sure.
Yeah.
It's 21?
Yeah.
Yeah, November 21. So we haven't been challenged. I don't have a problem with some of the provisions that you suggested. I just want to make sure that in the overall context, that what Peter wrote doesn't get changed so that we are opening ourselves up to some kind of challenge for the whole thing. Because I think Peter did a marvelous job on every ordinance he ever wrote for us. I mean, he did an excellent job. You can tell that because we haven't ever been sued over our ordinances. You know, even when they challenged us for a short-term rental, we had gone through what he wanted as far as findings of fact, and we were able to withstand the LULA challenge. And that's the benefit of having a really good lawyer.
So Carrie, would you be okay with having our new lawyer take a look at this and weigh in on it?
Yes,
Okay, and I would also really like to have Chief Gregory weigh in on this too. I'd like to hear his
Well,
thoughts about it.
that is the way to craft a good defendable ordinance, you are correct. Sometimes ordinances need to be changed because, oh, we didn't think of that. And I will grant you that Peter did write good ordinances, but this one was. It just, yeah, it achieved what you wanted it to do, but it went too far. Is it the best thing for our city? Is it best for our homeowners?
now,
Yeah, I think this is like 2.0. I mean, that's what you're trying to get to, is not change so much what we did at that time, those of us that were on the council, but to improve it and to allow people who can make some money on a Sunday by doing quiet work and not disturbing everybody around them, you know, that's an improvement. I think it's great.
Right, and then, one other thing, so I have no problem, and I would fully expect that the attorneys would look at this and weigh in on this and decide, and the police chief would also do it. And anybody in Leonard, anybody else that you wanted to include, I think that the more eyes we have on it, the better. But I would like us, if or when we ever do vote on this, I would like us to have on the record at that time, on the public record, some kind of decision as to whether, you know, the one other thing that problem that I had with the way it was written was that it did allow for emergency work. I would like us to kind of give on the record some ideas, some direction to the folks that would be enforcing this, what we think is emergency work. For me, if somebody needs some kind of a roof repair, to me, that's emergency work. And I would like us to have some kind of discussion on the record, so it gives them some direction down the road, as far as if somebody calls up and complains about a roof work being done, well, that's kind of, that needs to.
oh, that's a valid point. And so is, you know, if someone's got burst pipe in the middle of their lawn, they gotta bring in a track hoe.
Right.
To dig it out, I mean, there has to be, you know, common sense in there. And if that's what we need to do, we can do that, but it's, you know, an emergency is an emergency and it precludes any kind of fine or someone coming up and going, oh, you guys are going right now, get in your trucks.
See, really gets into nitty gritty though. I'm glad you said roof repair because, you know, you can need to have your roof repaired for like 3 months, right? I mean, it could be like a slow leak into your attic or, I mean, anyway, you get my drift. So the question is, do you have these, you know, do you have need to have the option for the roofers to come out on a Sunday to repair something that has been an ongoing situation? So how do you define an emergency? And I think that's what you're saying, we need to really flesh
Well,
that out.
Well, yeah, we do, but that is one of the, you write an ordinance as well as you can. But you also have to accept that the odds of us getting it 1,000% correct and never having to, you know, any kind of a question, it's difficult, even with our tree ordinance, as long as we worked on it, we still had to come back and we still gotta, well, I'm interpreting this way and I'm in this way, what do you guys want to say? I don't think that any of us expects the police chief to go climb up on a ladder and look at somebody's roof and say, well, this has been sitting here for a year, you should have taken care of it, it's not really an emergency. Because here's the problem, if he gets up there and says, it's not an emergency, get down and go away, guess what's gonna happen? That is when you're going to get the lawsuit. That is when you're gonna get somebody who's gonna come in and you're gonna have the police chief saying, I didn't think it was an emergency versus an actual roofer who's gonna say, oh no, it's an emergency. And there's no way the city wins that
Well,
argument.
then that throws out the whole ordinance.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't, because we can give some examples that kind of gives some guidance that we're gonna, if it comes to roofing repair, nobody's gonna get up there and say, well, you should have taken care of this a year ago, it's not an emergency. If they're doing a roofing repair, I think you should think of it as an emergency. And here's the other thing, when I needed to get my roof done, I had to wait 4 months to get it done.
Right.
And then they did work on the weekends to get it done too. So especially around here. So I think that that's really dangerous ground if we're going to make a determination that a roof repair under some conditions would not be an emergency. You'd have you're really opening yourself up to a losing battle. That would be something that you would be challenged on and you would lose when somebody's roof failed and, you know, all of a sudden now they need drywall and they need.
It works now.
No.
It works now, everybody's getting their roofs repaired on Sunday now.
Oh, I've seen
Oh,
that.
actually, I think somebody in my neighborhood was, just ignored it myself.
You know, they start on Friday and it might take them through Sunday. It doesn't matter. This is something we can discuss. I want this over at 8 o'clock. It is a work session. People need to go home.
So will this be on an agenda at some point in the future then?
Yeah, we're going to submit it to the lawyers and have them look at it. We're going to submit it to Gregory and have him look at it. Once the lawyers are done with it, and then we're gonna have it on an agenda.
I mean, I would just like to see the regular ordinance with Dana's changes written in with strikeouts or additions in bold or red or something that's really easy to see. What we have now with her suggestions. And then maybe show it to the lawyer.
I don't
just-
care how it's done, I just,
And if somebody else has, you know, has thought of something that I haven't thought of, I think now would be the time to submit it in writing to staff, let staff come up with such a document, like you said, and give it to the lawyer, get the lawyer's opinion. And you're right, he might come up and say, nah, I think that you are opening yourselves up, or he might say, yeah, you've lived with it for 2 or 3 years and you feel like this is an appropriate adjustment, you can make that adjustment, it it's not a problem. But, I think it's time for us to make the building, or the construction is slowed down quite a bit. It could increase in the future, but right now it's not. And I think that people should be able to do stuff in their house on a Sunday if that's the only day that they can get a contractor out. As long as it's quiet and not disturbing their neighbors.
From staff perspective, the biggest complaint has been, if they're doing something quiet, why can't they be there? Second biggest complaint is, I haven't been able to get anybody here midweek, and they're available to work on a Sunday, and yet I can't get them in. And then the third complaint, which was not very frequent, would be from somebody like a landscape contractor who has been waiting for the weather, and they finally get the nice day on Sunday, but they can't mow. You know, the yards, and so you catch up on that, and that was frustrating to them. Those are the three things that we're seeing. We haven't been in court yet with this, so we haven't seen how the our judge would adjudicate all of this. And then we've only given out one emergency permit, and it was very simple, and it was due to, at the end of Cottage, that car accident that happened. Hit the tile guy's car, he couldn't do any work, he was dealing with the police and the guy and the thing that was happening, and so we gave them an extension to work into that night and a little bit into the next Sunday. In order to finish the work for him, and we didn't have any complaints about doing it.
I mean, think about it, the way that this ordinance is written right now, it doesn't allow any contractor work, so how are the folks with the Airbnbs, the VRBOs up in the condos getting, that's not legal either.
That was a recent question, what about housekeepers cleaning, or the example that you used with the young lady who takes care of our gardens up here front without making any noise? Those are two issues that really haven't been solved. We have not held people accountable to not doing any house cleaning on Sundays. Didn't see that as the intention of the ordinance, and so I have not been regulating that.
The language specifically though addresses the type contractor
Contractors.
and landscaper.
Well, what it says is. No work shall be performed within the city limits of Deer Heart by any contractor, commercial developer, general contractor, or employees between the hours of 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. the next day. No work shall be performed on Sundays. So if I was a person who had a citation and wanted to get an attorney, I would suggest that my attorney ask, okay. How
So you're
is,
saying a housekeeper is a contractor?
well, they're paid to do the job.
But a
Yeah.
contractor means any of the following: a person that's compensated or with the intent to sell, arrange, or undertake, or offer to undertake or submit a bid to construct, alter, repair, add to, subtract from, improve, inspect, move, wreck, or demolish another building,
Improve.
highway, road. But
It's not improving it, it's just cleaning it.
Well, okay. How is, okay. I disagree, but, and I think the folks that pull weeds and would see it as an unfair,
How much noise are you making when you're pulling weeds?
It all depends on how loud you sing.
well, yeah,
You
that's
have
the other
the
thing is,
boombox
that's, yeah. The folks that I have more fun with, the contractors that park their cars out and their trucks out front and blast the music so that they can hear it in the house all week long. That, to me, that, I would like to see us include that at all times, that they have to live, abide by our noise ordinance,
Okay,
so.
anyone else got anything? Thank you very much for coming out, everybody.
No update on this,
Yeah, it went to a warning.
no update, it's still in conflict here for the, Oregon, California.
So are we still?
We know, we got 2 hours and 10 minutes before we find out what Hawaii's.
We moved up the advisor program, so we were just on the watch and now we're.
If we're gonna use, like the mayor said, we're gonna use some lighting or